colleagues, good afternoon. We're going to welcome you on our webinar of Transfer Academy. And before we start introducing our guests, a few words about technical issues. As far as I can see, we have new people joining us, and they probably may not know about technical issues. So we have the Russian-English, English-Russian interpretation. You have the menu down your screen. You can select the necessary channel, where Russian or English.
And you'll be able to choose the language channel by clicking the language you need.
Before I will give the floor to my colleague Irina Alexeyeva, the head of the School of Conference of Interpreting and Translation in St. Petersburg. I would like to congratulate her on the anniversary. This is the 10th year, and we would like to greet her with this, and we wish the graduates to new heights, and this school should be the symbol of the professionalism and success. So I wish you success and prosperity. And now I would like to give the floor to Irina Sergeyevna Alexeyeva to introduce our guest. Thank you very much for greetings. I would like to greet everyone and to welcome everyone. And you understand that we are not going to rest on our laurels, and our school is not really big, and so we will do our best and develop all together, in fact. And I'm really glad to introduce a distinguished guest. When you understand, our ideology is to get acquainted with different ways of teaching, of interpretation. If we look at this broad sense, our guests fits our ideology. So we promised you to tell you about different new trends in the sphere of translation, interpretation, teaching, and itself in the industry. And today we invited a person who has been cooperating with us for a long time, because we use his platform VoiceBoxer. So, and I would like to introduce Andrea Baccenetti. He is co-founder and COO of this platform, VoiceBoxer. So, and you can hear the interpreter's voice, and now you are on this platform. Andrew is going to tell us about the condition and perspective of simultaneous interpreting remote market, and probable conditions using these tools of remote interpreting in universities activity, so everything which is connected with the platform. So this is, I would like to begin, and now I would like to introduce our interpreters who are working. Both interpreters, Evgeny Labanov and Maria Kozlova, have a second chance to help us. Evgeny Labanov has a master degree of the Romano-Germanic philology. He is a teacher of English, and he is a translator, but starting from 2008, he combines interpretation with translation. And as a simultaneous interpreter, he has been working with quite respectable members and clients, United Nations, World Bank, Interpol, Ukrainian government, UEFA, etc. So please welcome him. The second interpreter, this is the graduate of our school, St. Petersburg School of Conference Interpreting and Translation, Maria Kozlova. She is graduated a year ago, and she hasn't yet got such a long record, but she successfully graduated from our school, and this is the fact which goes without saying. And I'm very glad that Maria will help us for the second time. And now I'm going to give the floor to Alexander Bondarenko, and he's going to tell briefly the plan of our event, today's event. So thank you very much, Irina Sergeyevna.
то, що ми сьогодні
what are we going to do today? First of all, we're going to give the floor to Andrea Baccenetti, and he's going to tell us, to present his platform, and in the virtual booth, the impressions will be shared by Evgeny Labanov after Andrea's presentation. As Irina Sergeyevna told Evgeny, both with Maria helping us for the second time, so thank them very much. After that, we're going to have Q&A session, and in the end of our, in the conclusion, Andrea will answer your questions, so you can use our chat of this platform. So it's in the bottom right corner. So Andrea, I'm going to give you the floor, so welcome to the
Welcome everyone, and thanks for the warm welcome to Alexander and Irina. It's a pleasure being presenting on VoiceBoxer and being part on your webinar, and it's a pleasure, of course, to be interpreted into Russian so that we can you can follow me in either English or Russian. What I want to talk to you about today is the new trends in interpreting. And so we call this webinar Outside the Box or Booth. And we're using VoiceBoxer, which is a platform which is designed for providing remote simultaneous interpretation. As you know, meetings are shifting more and more online. The picture that I'm showing here are probably really familiar to all of you. You will have seen on-site meetings moving towards online in the picture on the right, on the left, and then in this picture of the right you will see seminars, live presentation with a large audience that have been moving towards online in the so-called webinars. Of course, this doesn't mean that people are not meeting in person. I wanted to put here a quote from Barry Slaughter-Olson. I'm not sure if you know him. It's a veteran in the interpretation technology industry. But basically what he said, that people will still meet in person until they will be able to have a beer remotely. So yes, we're shifting online, but we'll still keep on the meeting in person. We also know that technologies today allow for easy implementation of various applications. I put here three big examples of what has been going on in the industry in the past years. First, we have web real-time communication, WebRTC. It's a series of protocols and applications that out of the box allow you to implement video and audio streaming solutions. What we use today in VoiceBoxer is exactly this out-of-the-box solution. The second is cloud services. We all have been hearing about the cloud, the big cloud, but what it's important to know about it is that the services on the cloud allow application to be put in place with a low investment. Just to give you an example, today VoiceBoxer had a large event in the morning and we needed to open a big server. We just did it with a cloud service. It took 5 minutes, and when the event was over, we switched it off again. Just 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, that was not possible. You would have needed like a server rack, and it would have not been easy to implement that. The third is, of course, extremely important as well, and it's the widespread of broadband internet connection. We are seeing the internet connection getting better and better everywhere, not only in developed countries, but also in developing countries. Actually, some developing countries are installing a really good and strong internet connection that are even better of developed country. There are a few African countries that just skipped the step of the landline, and now they are providing to their users really exceptional internet connection. And this allows people to be connected and to do business offline more and more. The third component is what is helping the industry of interpretation as well. So what we see is that remote interpreting is basically combining the two words. We have on one hand the webinar and video conference market. I put there some stats from the industry. It's a market that is constantly growing. More and more people are doing business online. More and more people are talking online globally. On the other side, we have the interpretation market, which is a market that is estimated to grow about 7% on an annual basis. And just as of a few years ago, was not able to serve small events or online events. Just think about the cost of serving an event with interpretation, simultaneous interpretation. You will need on-site a booth, technician, cables. You need to fly everyone in. Now that people are not meeting on-site necessarily, how can you provide interpretation service? Well, now what this remote interpreting solution are allowing to do is that you can live interpret simultaneously an event from every side of the world. So basically the remote interpreting is just giving the best of the two worlds. People will still meet online more and more, but still will not be able to speak the same language, and interpretation services will help that communication. So we know now that virtual interpreting booths are a reality. Today I'm speaking from Copenhagen, Denmark. It's 3:12 in the afternoon. We have people connected from other countries. I think if I can go to on my admin panel for a second, I will see people connected from Russia, Ukraine, Greece, Belarus, and so on and so forth. I also have seen somebody from Kazakhstan. Welcome. And we have the interpreters, which, if I recall correctly, are located in Ukraine and Russia. They are not sitting next to each other. They are working with each other. They can pass the microphone from one to the other. They can chat with each other. They have access to a live technician if there's anything that is wrong. They can listen to the floor, and they can also listen to the booth partner when they're not interpreting. And if the meeting was bigger and required relay, they could also access the relay. So what was impossible to think just a few years ago, thanks to the technology, now it is possible, and it's now a reality, and it's been used on an ongoing basis. Just so you know, as we are speaking now, there is a live event going on with large international NGOs that is connecting their stakeholders from all over the world. I can't even count the countries that are connected from. I just can give you just some examples. We have Senegal, Benin, Tanzania, whereas they are connected Bangladesh, United States, Uganda, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of them. Sorry if I don't list all of them. And what is happening is that they are communicating in English and French thanks to remote interpreting. The interpreter is, I believe, located in the United States, and that doesn't make a difference. It could be located in France, it could be located in Russia, it could be located anywhere else, as long as there is a strong connectivity. And I'll go back to that in a second. I see that you guys are posting some questions. By the way, there is a really nice feature where you can post questions in any language, and I will be able to answer and see them in English. I will get back to your questions in a while. So what can you do remotely today? You can do something like a webinar, like we're doing today. There is this image where I'm trying to communicate, you have a group of panelists, some interpreters located in the world, and then participants that can listen in their own specific language. Today, we have only English and Russian, of course. However, we don't have limitation of languages. You can also have a virtual meeting where all the people connected are participating as speakers, meaning that they're all interacting. This is possible today. And third, you can also accomplish live on-site events, and you can have the audience that can be either live or remote. You can have a combination of the two, and even the interpreters can be off-site or on-site. We have served events, just to give you an example, last year where everybody was on-site in a city in Mexico. However, due to the amount of interpreters that were needed for that event, it would have been economically unfeasible to fly all of them in this small village. And for that reason, the remote interpreting was done in Mexico City. We also had another event, it was actually the day after this big event, still in Mexico City, where we had English Chinese interpreter on site and English Japanese interpreters remote. And the audience was just listening on site. So you can have all sort of combinations and serve on-site events as well. There are many players at the moment, so I didn't want to only advertise VoiceBoxer. I wanted to be fair to the other platforms that are out there. And these are some of the names, so you can have and note them down if you want to go and check them out. I will keep saying that VoiceBoxer is the best, but of course, I will be a little biased on that. But just to give you an idea, these technologies are out there. There are customers using it on a daily basis. There are interpreters using on a daily basis for a whole different variety of use cases. So what's in it for the interpreters? I've heard many times that the interpreters were a little scared of their needs to be diminishing. On-site interpretation will not be needed anymore. And I want to challenge that. The reason why I put there iceberg image, and the reason why we use that image all the time that we present VoiceBoxer is to stress the importance of interpretation serving events that are not being interpreted today. Just think about how many conference calls, webinars, online meetings of any sort are happening every day. And imagine how many of them are served by interpretation. I can't give you any stats. I'm sorry for that. We'll be much better with some numbers. But what I want to stress is I want to pass the message that there's so much more that interpreters can help to accomplish in the online communication. So new opportunities are just arising for interpreters as the market expands, as people understand that providing interpreting services online is a possibility today. The second point is the possibility of interpreting events out of range. Now, many of you are interpreters located in specific cities, and I'm sure you are all used to travel a lot to go on-site to interpret for a specific event. Although some of you might like traveling and meeting people in person, everyone, I'm pretty sure that you're not traveling 7 days a week, or even like, let's say 5 days a week. Let's take a normal weekday. Well, what VoiceBoxer is allowing interpreter is to interpret from everywhere they are. So not only you expand the opportunities for serving things, serving events that were not served by interpretation before, but you can also do it from anywhere. So you could potentially be flying to a conference where you have to interpret in the afternoon, and in the morning have a couple of hours free and being able to interpret. Or you can also be an interpreter that unfortunately is living in a country where the language that is interpreted from and into are not widely spread. Well, you can use VoiceBoxer and interpret from wherever you are. The last example that I gave is from an interpreter that works quite a lot on VoiceBoxer. She has English, French, Spanish as languages, but she lives in Hungary. Well, with VoiceBoxer, she's able to use those languages much more, since she can just do it from her home office. What do interpreters need to know, though? So it all seems good, but there are some things that you have to consider. I'm borrowing a term from Barry Slaughter-Olson, the co-president of Interpret America, and the term is connected interpreter. The connected interpreter is the interpreter that combines the interpreting skills, a basic IT knowledge, and a modern IT equipment. Those three things are all essential to provide remote simultaneous interpretation services. Let me dig a little bit into that. When I say basic IT knowledge, I mean that you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be able to troubleshoot every issue that your computer has. You don't need to be able to develop code. It's far from being there. The basic IT knowledge that I'm listing here are points that you have to consider to survive as of today anyway. Just as you are a freelancer and you might need a website up and running to advertise your services, well, you will have probably gained some knowledge there that you can use to be a remote interpreter. I'm just putting here some of the things that you need to know. You need to know how to connect your audio equipment, how to adjust your audio settings on the computer. So where are the settings? What if I have a problem? Where do I have to go? You want to know how to manage your network settings. So connecting, for example, with Ethernet connection and not Wi-Fi. Using an internet browser, which I'm sure all of you know how to. And of course, troubleshoot basic problems. So for example, what if you can't connect to the internet? You see, I'm not writing there, you need to know how to develop in JavaScript, and you need to know how to access a server as an admin. No, these are all basic skills that you need to have in 2018 anyway. The other thing is the IT equipment. We are all used to switching to smartphone or iPads, tablets, and those are rapidly changing every year. And I've seen a tendency here and there to forget about renewing hardware like a computer. Well, first, let me tell you that it's not only for using VoiceBoxer that you might need a modern computer, it's for doing everything online. If you have a computer that takes 10 minutes to load and then 10 minutes to open Google Chrome, then you will be cut out of many other aspects of your life anyway. So having a modern computer, it doesn't have to be the latest model. My computer is 4 years old. It's as good as when I bought it, and it's working perfectly. So it just has to be like kind of a modern computer with modern specifications. You want to have a home office without background noise. If you want to interpret and you are in a office or even in your, let's say in your bedroom, and your bedroom is on a trafficated street, well, the background noise there will be caught by the microphone. You want to have an Ethernet connection to a broadband internet. That's extremely important, of course. You have a need for have a stable connection. Although I have to remind you that WebRTC, this protocol that we are using for connecting, allows you to use a really limited amount of bandwidth. I invite you to go with the mouse over my webcam area, and you will see how much bandwidth you are currently consuming. I'm not sure if everybody of you is familiar with those numbers, like in kilobytes per second or so, but if you are, I'm pretty sure you will be surprised. If you're not, I understand, and we can take this in a second moment. I can explain you a little more. And last but not least, as IT equipment, is a professional headset with possibly noise-canceling microphone. Now, the headset that I'm using, I'm gonna show it closer to the camera, so apologies for the interpreters if you, for a few seconds, my mouth will be far. But what I'm showing to you is a headset that is 50 or 60 euro on the internet. You just buy and plug and play, and it works fine. I've been having this for 3 years, and I've used it extensively since I ran a lot of demonstration on VoiceBoxer, and it's working as it was 3 years ago. It has the little foam covering the microphone, which ensure that a lot of the background noise is not caught, and I'm really comfortable using it. So I want to conclude my presentation with a quote from Bill Hood, the founder of DS Interpretation, which is like a company in the United States. Bill Hood is a veteran of the interpretation industry, and he came up with this quote a few years ago, that the interpreters will not be replaced by technology. They will be replaced by the interpreters who use technology. That's a really, really good quote that we always use with interpreters. You know, VoiceBoxer is not trying, as any other plane is, to disrupt the industry. We're not trying to say interpreters are not, we're going to replace interpreters with machine translation, with machine interpreting. We're not. We're providing new tools for you to perform your job, and we are trying to convince the market, convince the customers that they can speak their own language and communicate in their own language online thanks to simultaneous interpretation. Good. That's the end of my presentation. I've seen that a lot of the questions already are popping out in the chat. I thank all of you for listening for this 25 minutes. I put here my email address. You're most welcome to contact me or to learn more about VoiceBoxer on our website, voiceboxer.com. And if you go to the specific page, voiceboxer.com/interpreters, you can learn more about the virtual booth, and you can also register to be in our pool of interpreters. Having said that, Alexander, do you want me to start with the questions that I've seen here in the chat, and then we take the one coming from you? Well, just let me know, how do you want to proceed? Okay, I can see that you.
Of course, we will read all of these questions, but right now we will hear from one of the interpreters. We considered that would be valuable and especially interesting for those who interpret to hear the impressions of this interpreter about his experience. Just a few minutes ago, he interpreted us. So I would like to introduce Evgeny Labanov. Irina Sergeyevna mentioned Evgeny. He will share his experience about using this platform for remote interpreting. Evgeny, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. This is the first time I am both the presenter and the interpreter at the same meeting. Andrea, thank you very much for your presentation. So now I would like to briefly share my experience. This is the second time I've used this platform. But despite having this limited experience, I can say that there are no significant differences between working offline and online remotely. The advantages are that you really don't need to spend the time and efforts on commuting. You're working from home in a comfortable environment at a working place you're used to. As for the disadvantages, as strangely as it sounds, is that you're working remotely. You have no way of contacting the audience. I'm not talking about technical matters, but personally, I'm missing a live visual contact with the audience. I would like to see the reactions to my interpretation. As for the risks of remote interpreting, there are increased requirements for internet connections and sound quality. You can minimize these risks by having connections using several internet providers and having professional headsets. As for the skills that the interpreters need, then there really are no differences. You need the exact same set of skills that you use when interpreting on site. And just now, when I switched over to the system as a presenter, I saw some of the questions. There was a question about payment and about preparation time to start working online. So, payment. I don't see any reason why payment should be higher or lower. You apply the same rates. As for preparation time, I insist in the fact that there are no differences in working online and offline. That's all for me. Thank you very much for listening. So now let's start with the questions. The first question, is it possible to classify all available platforms based on their features? For example, into platforms that require software installations and into platforms that don't work from the cloud?
Thanks for all the questions, and thanks Evgeny for providing your feedback on what is the use of VoiceBoxer. So for the first question, yes, so I can go back to the list that I've sent you. Yeah, oops. Out of this, all but Linguali do not require any software installation. They all work out of the box from your browser. They all based on WebRTC technology, so they will work with Chrome and Firefox. Some of them, including VoiceBoxer, also have an application for smartphone, so you might want to download that if you want to. But yeah, otherwise they will work without any installment. Linguale is a little bit different because it serves primarily on-site events, and that will require an installed software. But other than that, no other software. So let me just go back to the thank you slide. Yeah.
Thank you very much for answering, Andrea. So I have another question. It's quite technical, but maybe it would be useful for the interpreters and for other people. Why do some platforms have restrictions on using video and on the number of participants? Does it have to do with the technology, or is it specifically related to some platforms? I'm not asking only because it's interesting for our listeners, but because when we were choosing the platform for our projects, we noticed that some platforms have limitations on the number of listeners, and that made us doubt whether we should use this platform, because if our audience grows, the platform will not be able to keep up. So
That's a really good question. WebRTC, the technologies that is underneath all of the platform, is pretty new. It's been out there in the market for a few years, but all the recent applications and come out in the last probably 4 years. For that reason, each platform puts some limitation as we are trying to serve bigger and bigger events. Why is that? I think it's just a matter of how any specific company decide to target their audience. If you are willing to do on-site events only, then you might want to have a lot of reception for audience members using smartphone, for example. If you want to do specifically only conference call, then you want to be able to give everybody the possibility to have the webcam on and the microphone. So there are other things to consider. If you mainly do webinar, then you might have a group of panelists, bunch of interpreters, and then other people listening. So it really depends on the use case, and therefore every company has developed a different approach to how many people can connect online at the same time.
next question, and it's of particular interest for me as an interpreting instructor. How can remote interpreting platforms be used for teaching interpreting?
That's a really good question. Again, thanks for that. We have a couple of customers, and I can actually post now here one of the customer success case that we have on our website. They are universities and are using VoiceBoxer for instructing the interpreters. It's something that is happening already. The platform allows you to automatically record every event that you do. So how they reach their goal is by using VoiceBoxer, setting up different booths with different people connected. They will run mock conferences, record everything, and then listen to the interpretation given by the students, so they can basically check what was the quality of the interpretation, and even the quality of the hardware to check whether the students were good enough to check their own hardware and be able to understand how to solve any issue. So feel free to reach, to go to that link and check that page. And but certainly it's something that is been going on already on VoiceBoxer. Back to you.
Thank you very much for answering, Andrea. I think that we have already answered this question in part, but what are the advantages and disadvantages of using remote interpreting platforms compared to using on-site platforms? Obviously, we have already heard a part of the answer, but if you have anything to add?
So, as an interpreter, you might want to do remote interpreting for just a few hours per day. We have the beauty of having online communication not lasting more than 1 hour, 1 and a half. That's usually the sweet spot. And two interpreters covering that amount of time will give you, will alleviate the stress related to interpreting remotely. We have had some cases of longer events up to 6 hours, and we admit that we talked with interpreters after that. They were talking and were, of course, working in pairs, and there were some scheduled breaks during the event. However, the fatigue was higher than a normal on-site event in those cases. However, most of the events, as I said, are lasting around 1 hour or maybe 1 and a half. And in a day, you might do 1 or 2 of them. Probably that will be the maximum. So that's what I think about the fatigue related to the work. The other risks, of course, are related to technical issues that you might have. That's why knowing about a little bit of technology and knowing how to solve issues on your own computer would be, it's an asset for working remotely. Or actually, let me rephrase it, it's a requirement, not only an asset. And that will minimize the risk that things are not working properly. For example, we had one interpreter that worked on our platform, great interpreter, simultaneous interpreter on site. When it comes to using a computer, not the best. What happened is that he was not able to unmute his microphone from the settings. And this, of course, caused some stress because then we have to solve remotely very last minute before the event is started. And, you know, that's a stressful situation. We want to avoid that for the interpreters, of course, and that's why I constantly repeat, okay, you have to follow the checklist of checking your own audio, and then you have to be knowledgeable about how to manage your settings. Back to you.
So it's a very good question I would like to ask you. It is connected with what, Andrea, you have been saying right now. Andrea, tell us, please, apart from the internet, can be a risk. So just it could be risky for this remote interpreting. What are other risks? You should get acquainted with the equipment. What are other rules to avoid these risks?
I will say that the other rules is just practicing. I can understand it's probably one of the questions that were posted from Alexander. How many hours do you need to feel comfortable? It's just a matter of one event probably. What I've noticed is that when we run training for the interpreters, the first time they might be a little, not threatened, but a little worried about the performance. Then we run the first event and they are a little bit scared. And then after the first event, when everything goes fine, then we'll be happy, and then the second time will be just really easy. When the interpreter is skilled, has a good computer, good connection, and knows how to use a computer, then apart from the first event where you might be a little bit scared, everything else works really well and really fine. So I don't see many risks there. I just highlighted the risk of fatigue if you interpret for long periods remotely, and also the isolation that was brought up earlier. Those are all things that are still valid, and that's why you shouldn't probably be interpreting simultaneously and remotely on a constant basis. Apart from that, good internet connection and good computer and knowledge of how to use the computer will solve most of the issues.
Wonderful, Andrea. I see. So Andrea has answered to several questions in the list, and the final question, we're going to read the questions from our participants, from our guests. What perspectives of a development of the remote interpreting platform will be able to see, not in the nearest future, but in the future, in the perspective of VoiceBoxer development in particular?
That's a really good question. So first of all, these are new technologies. So all of the companies that I mentioned above are trying to succeed in the market. We are all new companies. We all are advocating for these services to be done online. What we've seen is that there is one size fits all kind of approach, or at least we started by being specialized, and now everybody's doing other things, and that's normal because the technology underlying these platforms is the same. Down the line, we'll see probably some convergence of development and probably some cooperation with large players for conferences. For example, just think about GoToMeeting, which serves millions of users every day. Well, imagine that powered with a virtual booth from VoiceBoxer. Down the line, in many, many years, though, the story is different. We all are monitoring what are the developments of the neural translation. I'm pretty sure that you have seen many videos of the in-ear translators that are supposed to translate consecutively what somebody is saying. And I invite you to check it out. I'll probably, if you give me a second, post something here. I think it's pretty funny. What you will see in this video that I'm posting, and just basically save it for later, is that we're far from being able to even use a simple conversation consecutively. When we talk about bringing this into simultaneous, giving it recognition of what is the semantics, what is the subject being talked about, and then delivering that in a way that doesn't sound robotic, well, we all know that it's pretty far down the line. Technologies are evolving, and I know at the pace of which they evolve is pretty far, so I don't want to give an outlook of 20, 30 years, as somebody posted in the chat, because that would be pretty hard for me. However, probably in the next 10 years, we won't see any significant change just yet.
Andrea, so I'm going to translate the question, Alexander's question. Are there any discounts for universities if they would like to use your platform for academic purposes, and who should they contact to establish this cooperation? I would like to add my interest. What universities you have such contracts already?
Sure, that's a great question. You can contact me at andrea@voiceboxer.com. We have some special rates for universities. And I'm happy to discuss it with you. What we'll give you is that we will train you on how to use the system by yourself, and then you can just use it at a reduced rate where you will not need live technical support. Most welcome to write me an email. Regarding what universities, the one that I can disclose, I think they are the one that I've highlighted in the chat. So we have Glendon University and Glendon College in Canada. We also had some courses in Brazil. I cannot disclose the name, I believe. But yeah, and then we're in touch. We've done a class already with a university in the UK, although I can't really remember the name, so my apologies for that. But yeah, we've been doing some collaboration with the university. So feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to give you more information.
Andrea, the following question, and it was repeated. So as far as I can remember, the live interpreters are asking, do you have special technical support for simultaneous interpreters? If a simultaneous interpreter has certain difficulties, who should he or she contact?
How can you make sure that your client can hear you? Is there a chat?
Здравствуйте все, как вы убеждаетесь?
Or any other function. То есть как клиент и переводчик могут общаться, чтобы
Alexander is translating the question into Russian.
происходит перевод в смысле. Переключаюсь на Андрея.
So, Andrea, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so the technical help is there for the interpreters. Actually, you all have access to a similar technical assistance. In the question mark that you can see at the bottom left, you can reach out to a live operator. Please do not do that now, because we are also having another event at the moment, so our support operator are with other people, but yes, we have that live possibilities. It's really easy. We can see a lot of things from our side. We can listen to your audio channel even if you're not broadcasting to the general audience. We can listen to you before the event starts, so we can make sure that we solve everything about you, about everything. We can see what's your configuration, what's your computer, where you're connected from. So we have all of a sort of information to help you perform your job. And then the other question was regarding the, I forgot, but I wrote it down here, so give me just a second. Yeah, it's here. How can you make sure that your clients can hear you? Well, we can control the audio feeds behind the scenes, so we can make sure that everything runs fine. As a first thing that you will notice if you're connected as a speaker or interpreter is that there is a volume bar going up and down. Of course, as audience members, you don't have that, so you can't really see it in action. However, the interpreters and the speakers can do that, and they can see that if that is moving, it means that the platform is working with you. Okay, actually, I just take the two other questions that I had seen in the chat, so no need for repeated. First one is there a slowdown reminder for the speaker? And yes, there is. The interpreters can send a slowdown reminder, and you are welcome to do that now from your interface just to try it out. It's on the left side of the pane where there's a triangle, and if either one of the two interpreters connected now hacked on that, I will see a notification. And here it is. It's also anonymous, so I don't know who did it. So you can always be sure that we are not communicating your name like Andrea has asked you to slow down. And then the other question that I see now in the chat is if there's something on as like a mute button, and the answer it is yes. We have a mute button for the interpreter, so they can just click there and mute their own microphone. Good, so back to you, Alexander.
As far as I can see, so we're just short in time. Andrea, you have answered the basic questions and details, or some details, so we have some nuances and more questions from the simultaneous interpreters, and we will post you, email them. Thank you very much for everybody who took part. So thank you very much to Evgeny and Maria for the interpreting. Thank to my colleague Alexander for this cooperative work. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Irina. And I join, so I'm glad to. So thank you, Andrea, for this brilliant presentation. Thank you very much for your answering the question. So I hope all the participants knew a little new for them, learned a little new for them, and I hope that we will continue. We invite the participants to leave their questions in on our Facebook public or Twitter, so you can write directly to Andrea, and you have email andrea@voiceboxer.com, and if so, Andrea will be glad to answer your questions, and the response we will publish in our Facebook public. You will be able to get acquainted with them. We invite all schools of interpreting and translation for cooperation, so they're our basic guests, main guests. So our contact information we have on our website. So see you soon. So Andrea, I'll give you the floor for the concluding word.
Thanks a lot to everyone. It's really been a pleasure to present to all of you. And feel free to reach out to me. You have my email address here, and I'll be waiting for any feedback from your side. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.